What's up guys, welcome back to another Revit video. In this video we'll be looking at all the new features and updates with Revit 2021. Really exciting, brand new program, Revit 2021. Before we get into all the new features, I do want to say if you do learn something in this video, if you would like the video, it really helps me out a lot. Also, if you are new here and you've never seen me before, you've never seen any of my videos, please consider changing the phase of that subscribe button to existing. That really helps. Let's jump right into it now. There are lots of new features with Revit 2021, and I'm really excited to share all of those with you. The first of them being the fact that as soon as you start Revit, there's supposedly a new dialog box that shows up here at the top right hand corner as you first start Revit. And even when I first opened Revit, I didn't actually see this, so maybe it's literally if you've never opened Revit ever on your PC, regardless of the version. But there's not a whole lot with it other than it's going to prompt you to select the different disciplines that you're working with, or the types of construction or architecture that you're used to working with. Maybe you're doing engineering and what all that applies to you. But it's not a big update other than it's going to set the default layout for you in your Revit workspace. So I don't have that to show you, but what I do have is I can show you the overrides. So again, there's nothing really new with this, but if you go into, if I go back here and go to File Options, it's basically pulling everything from the user interface and deciding based on your selections what you're showing, whether you're showing the structural tab or the systems tab, so anything that has to do with engineering. Maybe you're just dealing with architectural. Anyways, that's where you can override all the different tabs you see up here at the top. This is nothing new within Revit actually, but it's just the fact that that dialog box pops up that you would see. And unfortunately, I don't have that to show you, but that's okay. If we're looking here back at the home page, we can see there's now actually a section under recent files for BIM 360. And if you have any BIM 360 files, they would populate there. Perhaps the biggest update and coolest addition to Revit 2021 is the fact that there's generative design now. And you can find that in the Manage tab right here under Generative Design. There's Create Study and Explore Outcomes. So I'm going to open this Create Study, but first I want to define what generative design is. To give you an example, I'd basically say that it's you set some parameters on model elements or data or something, and you're basically testing a bunch of different variations of maybe it's a layout or rearranging data or using data in different ways to give you different results. And this is, the computer doing this automatically for you based on the parameters you set and the inputs that you give it. So this is the basic Create Study, and fortunately we've got a few different studies here that are out of the box with Revit 2021 that we can work with. So if I click on 3-box massing, well, I can see that it generates simple massing models by varying heights and relative positions. And so basically the inputs for this are the different boxes with all the heights and areas and whatnot. And then I have goals, or I have things to test for. In this case, we've got the floor area or surface area, and let's say maybe we want to maximize those. And I can set constraints if I want to by defining a minimum and max floor area or not. I don't necessarily need to do that. You can set a population size. Let's go ahead and put 200. And generations, they are essentially, you could think of that as the number of times that the computer is going to go through and determine that you have another option to choose from. So like in this case, 10 generations, we'd have those 10 different options that we could use and manipulate and get different results based on our inputs and everything in this window. And I can hit generate at this point, and now it's going to take me to the Explore Outcomes tab. And you can see I'm in Explore Outcomes. I've got this 3-box massing 001. It's got the date and all the information, and you can see that it's starting to generate. And you can see the generations here, 0 of 10 completed, and this shouldn't take all that long. And so yeah, you can see it's starting to populate here, and as it does, the generations are going to be viewable down here as these lines, and everything that's running between these different parameters that you've set, you notice that these parameters up at the top are what we use to define in the beginning, and the lines that connect them are basically one generation, but with different varying parameter values. So I can come in here later. I'm going to come in here after this is done and we can start affecting some of these different inputs. But I remember many years ago when I was working with Grasshopper in Rhino is when I was first introduced to generative design. And I was fascinated by it even back then, and that was 5+ years ago. And that was the first I saw of it. It was actually a plugin for Grasshopper called Galapagos, like the Galapagos Islands. I actually have a video that I came out with years ago also that was covering that, and I think I'll link that in the cards right now, and you can find that up there if you want to see what it looks like. And you could even still use that Galapagos plugin within Grasshopper today, and I think it's very powerful. But it is basically doing the same thing that we see here in Revit 2021. So now this is finally completed, and I can see that I've got my different variations here. And I actually have the option to choose these different elements, and whichever one I have selected is going to be this bolded line, and the one that we're looking at. And what we can do is we can look at these different elements. We could have all the properties that we see. We can see the height of each of the boxes, all these different parameters. And maybe we want to change the way this looks. We can actually click this button and we can start to get this laid out in a different way. We can see where all these different values fall just by determining which one of these parameters that we're looking at. So I like the line view because we can see kind of all of it at the same time. But I can click, maybe we want to define that the floor area is a bit different. Well, I can actually just drag this and define exactly where in this I want to include in, like, actually get data out of this study. So if I include this range up here, I'm only going to get these two values and these two results here. So we can see that even through the 10 generations that it went through, it was only able to come up with 3 different results. And that's, of course, this is just based on all of my inputs, and I would actually get all the results if I put in different inputs. And once you've decided which model you like in your project, you can actually click Create Revit Elements, and it will just dump it into your project for you. That's pretty nice. So you can continue to come back here and pull from this once again. If you decide to either run this again or pull the same model in, you can always create the Revit element again. That will do it for generative design. Now, obviously this is just a very basic overview using an out-of-the-box template that they have within Revit 2021. So I'm going to go have a specific video for this in the near future that will cover everything with generative design that you might want to know. And this does involve Dynamo, so if you're curious about Dynamo, I have some videos, but we'll have to get into Dynamo a lot more when it comes to creating this, because it's not something that you can create natively out of just simply Revit yet. It'll have to be used through Dynamo. This is pretty exciting when it comes to walls in Revit 2021. I'm just going to place some walls here. Doesn't necessarily matter, but you actually have the ability to use walls in a slanted fashion. Now, normally if you're used to using Revit walls, they're straight up and down. And if you're using anything that's slanted or angled, you're going to have to create a mass or something, and then actually under the walls use this option, which is pick faces, and basically put that wall on a face. And that was the only way you could get this weird slant to a wall that you might be after in some more organic design, or just having a basic slant wall. So it's very easy, and it's out of the box here in Revit 2021. Slanting walls, it's so simple. So I've got these sets of walls here, and all I can do is select one. It's an instance parameter, makes it very easy. And if I look down here, I can see cross section determines whether the wall is vertical or slanted. Great. So vertical is the default. That's good. You're gonna, there's no change in the way walls working out of the box normally, except now we have this option to choose slanted instead of vertical. And as soon as I choose slanted, again, I still have this wall up and down, straight up and down, because I'm at 0 degrees. But the second I change this angle, let's say 10 degrees, I have this nice angled wall. It's a slanted wall. It's very nice. And then not only that, but it keeps the joins to the walls. They perform all the same. And I can go crazy here. Now, obviously you're going to get some joining problems once you get to a certain point, but even my joins on one side work just fine at 45 degrees. If I I can even put doors in here all the same. There's nothing that's crazy here that's going to work just fine. Obviously it's going to cut all the way through here because I'm looking at a floor plan. That's really nice. The same works with windows. Let's go ahead and angle this wall here. change this one to slanted, put this at 20 degrees maybe, and I'll put some windows in here, just like that. That works. So now we got some windows, some doors, and slanted walls. Did you ever think we could get to this point? I didn't, but hey, this is pretty cool. So I'm gonna go to 3D and we can see what it looks like. So it's kind of ridiculous, and it's not something you would do, but just to push the limits, you can do this. And because you can't slant a door or a window, like just by default, you're unfortunately gonna have to deal with this in some other way. Like you're gonna have to add more. Like if you really did want to inset the door like that, it's not gonna fill in these gaps for you. So typically, you're probably going to have these at a smaller slant, if it, maybe 5 degrees or something. That looks a little more accurate. Of course, you still have this extra room to deal with, but for the most part, it looks pretty good, and it's actually working because we can do slanted walls now. That's great. And not only does it work that way, but of course, I can go negative. I can do negative 10 degrees, and it will angle the other direction. This is fantastic. It's very easy. This is something I wanted to add with the slanted walls. You might think that you're stuck with the doors and windows stuck oriented vertically like the walls used to have to be, but that's actually not the case. So if I click on this wall, we can see I've got it slanted at a certain degree, but actually if I click on this door, there's immediately the instance parameter at the top is orientation, and it's set to vertical, and I have the option of choosing between vertical or slanted. So I'm going to choose slanted, and as soon as I do that, it's going to adjust to the host, which that is pretty cool. So I can do the same thing for all 3 of these windows and reorient those to be slanted. And once I do that, they perfectly align with my slanted wall. And even as I just adjust this angle, say I change the angle there, they're going to follow that orientation of the slanted wall now. That's very interesting, very cool. It's nice to see that because, at first sight, you'd think you're stuck with this door vertically, and with this slanted wall, it doesn't quite work. Now, I would be hesitant to do this a lot just because this may not work like on a constructability standpoint. I can't remember the last time I saw an angled door in a slanted wall. Like typically you're furring out the door to be still vertical within the slanted wall, and it just kind of works that way. So just wanted to point that out because clearly it would look weird if this were not the case, but glad that we're able to change all these hosted objects to have a slanted orientation. So not only can we slant these walls, but we can slant curved walls, which that's very exciting too. I've got the same instance parameter here, cross section here, move that to slanted, and I've got an angled wall. And it would take so long to get this kind of an angled wall, especially a curved wall in Revit. You'd have to use a mask, you have to extrude the profile. It was just a mess. But the fact that you can do this so quickly is awesome. I can see myself just throwing lots of masks together and just studies together in Revit, and I get to actually use walls this time instead of masses. I never really enjoyed working with masses, but now that this works, it's awesome. Again, I can always go negative here, works just the same, but I'm going to get rid of these doors and windows, and we can start to push the limits here. Now, I have to push the limits because that's a part of what this is. You've got to push the limits and see how far you can go. Well, if I put in, I want to just put 90 degrees here. Well, if I put in 90 degrees, it's going to tell me, now obviously you can't have a flat wall. At that point, we're getting to a floor. So it says, please enter a value between negative 90 and 90 degrees. Okay, well, let's continue to push this. So if I go 89.9, what's going to happen? Well, I get this unjoin. Well, of course it's going to unjoin, but look what happens. This wall, which is still spanning from level 1 up to an unconnected level of 20 feet, is now basically off my screen. This is absurd. And this is, it's spanning the 20 feet height. It's doing what it's doing. The angle is 89.9. This, unfortunately, is the type of thing that I think was half-baked within Revit. I don't know a good way of limiting the values that you could put in here unless you limit it to 80 degrees, 70 degrees, I don't know. But the fact that you can get this kind of result is, in my mind, kind of stupid. But just to be aware, you can go this high if you want. I can imagine I can even go to 89.99, and sure enough I can, and it gets even longer. I have mixed feelings about this, but just be aware that you can do that. People can do that, and it will happen. Just so you know. I can actually if I want to push the limits of all my joins, I can actually just get some weird joins in here. Let's do a 15 degrees here, and I'll do negative 30 degrees here. And I'm just going to try and trim these together and see what happens. Just using the regular trim tool, and it actually works. Like that's unbelievable. That's really nice. And I can even go, let's go negative 30 degrees here. And I mean, this is great. The fact that this works, and I get my clean joins, and all my joints still work. I've still got the standard butt joint. Like, this is great. That is good to know with slanted walls. The fact that we can use slanted walls now is awesome. I do want to test this when it comes to slanted walls. I want to test curtain walls. That's probably this would be the most interesting thing. If I'm going to go all the way to the end, I'm going to try a curved curtain wall here. So do a curved curtain wall. Look at this in 3D. There's my curtain wall, and let's see if we have that instance parameter. Sure enough, I do. There it is, cross section, vertical. Let's change that to slanted and put this at 20 degrees. Now, if this isn't the coolest thing ever, the fact that I can now go and I have this angled, curved curtain wall. I'm going to put all my mullions on here. That is awesome. This is going to be probably the highlight of the fact that you can slant walls. It's going to be slanted curtain walls too. That's really cool. Really cool. Look at that. I'm going to have some fun with this one for sure. It's so easy. Moving on now, I'm going to go to just a basic floor plan here. And if we go to the Manage tab, and I go now to Manage Links, we can see I've got all my standard links, but I've got PDFs. And images came a year or two ago where you can link in images, but now we can link in PDFs. It's going to perform the exact same as images. There's nothing special here really, but I'm going to click Add, and I've got a basic floor plan, which happens to be the exact same floor plan that we're looking at. Maybe wanted to use this as a different option or just as a placeholder or something. You can set the resolution here. You can set that to 150, hit OK. Now I've got this complete linked PDF, and you can see it's loaded and everything. I can hit OK. Perfect. So now, maybe I want to place this. Well, I can go back here, of course, and I can go to PDF and click on it, and there's Place Instance. So I can actually choose this, and it's going to just go to the view that you're currently in, and I can place this. And look at that. It works. I can see my PDF. And we can clearly see that it's rastered because it's blurry, and as I zoom in more, it gets more blurry because I set that 150 dpi compared to my rasterized Revit, which, you know, there's a clear difference, obviously, because this is a PDF. So just to prove this works, I actually have this open, and I'm going to make a change to it. So let's go ahead and maybe we'll just add some text here. So I'm going to choose Add Text. We have added some text. Let's make this a little bigger so we can see it. I have added some text. I've made a change to this PDF. Let's go ahead and save the PDF. Save the PDF. I'm going to close it now. And now we're back here in Revit. And I will then go back to Manage Links, go to our PDFs. And just like a Revit model, an image, anything else, I can simply hit Reload. And as soon as I do that, this PDF should update. And I hit OK. And there's my updated PDF. That's great. It works. It's a linked PDF. That's awesome. And of course, you can still see this in the Insert tab. There's Link PDF and Import PDF. Perfect. That's great. Glad to know that they are there. This is kind of interesting too. If we look at a door schedule for this floor plan layout, I've got my door schedule. And just like before, we've got the freeze header. So if I scroll up and down, I will lose the header, but I can freeze the header. So I like to do that. But that's not actually new. But what is new? Well, actually, the row striping. We have additional row striping. If you remember in 2020.1, I believe we actually had the introduction of row striping, and every other row was this nice blue color that you could see. And not only now, but I can select the row and I can still see that blue. That was something else from 2020. But if you look up here at the top, there's no row striping to choose from. Well, that's because it's now in the appearance of your door schedule, or it's in the appearance of any schedule. So I can click on that, and immediately I see in the graphics stripe rows, and that's unchecked by default, so just be aware of that. So I can choose that, and the first selection here is the first row stripe color. So maybe I want to make this a blue color. Okay, and then I can do second row color. I can choose that second color, and maybe we want this to be a red. And we actually have the option. This is really exciting because before 2021, all the striping and all the graphics and everything that you saw in the schedule view would not populate whenever you put that schedule onto a sheet. But now by default, we've got this show striped rows on sheets. That's cool. So I'm gonna hit OK, and now we're gonna get every other row being these ridiculous red and blue colors. And still, we could see that highlighted row there, just indicate that I'm selecting that row. So that's great. That's cool. That works out. We can see it. It's a little more organized. The colors are ridiculous, maybe, but that's okay. But now, just to demonstrate that this does work on a sheet, let's go ahead and put this on a sheet. I'll take my door schedule. We will put it on a sheet. And sure enough, we've got our colors. That's great. It's a good way of helping present data, show off data, organize it in a better way, having color. It's really nice. Now, maybe less bold colors, but nonetheless, it does work. And it's really nice that you can do this on your schedule and now show up on your sheet and get it printed that way. That's great. Going back to my floor plan view, there's a small update with filters. So I'm going to go into my visibility graphics of my view, go into filters, and we can see that there is now a new tab under the filters here that says enable filter. Okay, that's nice. Now let's go ahead and add one. I'm going to add a walls highlight, and so this is just highlighting all the walls that are greater than 3 feet long. We'll go ahead and add a pattern to it here. We'll make this solid, and we're just going to show that it's red. Okay, I'm going to hit apply, and as soon as I do that, all these walls that are greater than 3 feet long will show up in red. Okay, that's great. So going back to filters, I have this enable filter, and I can uncheck this, and as soon as I do that and hit apply, you can guess what happens. The filter is no longer enabled. Now why is this nice? This is nice because it will allow you to not have to remove the filter just to unenable it, because in previous versions of Revit, what you'd have to do is actually remove that filter and like remove it from the filters list, which was too bad because maybe you just wanted to turn them off for a second. Maybe you wanted them for the long term, but didn't want to have to remove them for what you're doing in that moment. So this is really nice. And again, this is because I'm in the visibility graphics of this specific view. You can see which view I'm in right there. This is a view specific element. Just know that. So I'm going to include that here. Now I'm going to go to the elevation, and this is just another elevation in that same project. And going into the visibility graphics in filters, I've got this here applied to the surface here. It's not applied right now, but as soon as I enable this, I apply it and it works just the same. Again, I'm in this elevation 1 view. It is view specific. It allows you to keep all these filters on here and enable or disable ones that you do not want to see at the moment. It's very nice, simple, but it's a nice change. Heading back to my floor plan, I'm going to turn this filter off. And we're going to take a look at, there's an update to tags. So now, maybe I want to, tags now rotate with an element. And they don't do that by default, but we're going to run through how you can set that up really quickly so you don't have to worry about it anymore moving forward. So let's say we've got this restroom. And let's say that this restroom gets ridiculously angled. And I'm going to just move this here and readjust the restroom and all these toilets here to where they are now angled with this wall. And I can't say that this would be a normal thing, but just so we can show that these tags now rotate, let's show this working. Actually, I'm going to apply the tag before I rotate. So I've got a plumbing tag in my project, and I've called this plumbing tag. So there's my plumbing tag, and it's associated to the type mark of this specific family. So at this point, maybe we want to now rotate all these elements because we need to actually get them on this back wall. So I'll rotate them, and sure enough, that tag will not rotate. Well, of course it won't, but how will it rotate in Revit 2021? Well, what we're going to have to do is go into the family itself. And fortunately, it's very easy after that. I'm going to hit Edit Family, and you can see I'm here. I'm in my family. There's nothing else here except the tag, or my label. And the only instance parameter I have, or the only parameter I have for this entire tag is this rotate with component. And as soon as I check that, you could probably guess what's going to happen. I'm actually now able to have this tag rotate with the element. So I can simply load that back into the project. Sure, let's go ahead and load it back into my project there. Sure, I'll save it. Yep, why not? We'll override it, and then great. We can see that it does actually rotate with it. Now, let me demonstrate this better. So I'm going to copy this element. Copy this element here. And let's go ahead and add a tag to it. There's my tag. And let's go ahead and just rotate this at random. There we go. We can clearly see that our tag does rotate with this element. That's really nice. It's simple, easy. There's not a whole lot that you need to worry about other than going to the trouble of hitting that checkbox in the family. And then you've got it rotating with your family, your component there. That's great. I can't see that I necessarily need to do that with a lot of tags or even all my tags, but with specific tags, maybe furniture tag, whatever it is, I can see myself doing that with. It's just a nice change. So this is perhaps one of the coolest new features in Revit 2021. It's the fact that you can have voids that cut a family based on instance or type parameters. Now, this was not even possible in Revit 2020 and before. It just wasn't, which means you couldn't actually bake the void itself into any sort of visibility parameter, but now you can. So I'm going to go through a quick example of just a pew that I've modeled and that has some voids. So here's my pew. There's nothing all that special about it. I'm going to show it in 3D here. Here's my pew. That's great. There's nothing all that special right now, but I want to put some extra detail in it. Now, let's go into the pew itself. I'll go into the family. And so I went ahead and put some voids here. And so these are just voids that would show extra detail. So the cool thing about this new feature is that I can click on this void, and over here I see cuts geometry yes. And so you can almost treat this as a visibility, like is it visible? And you could see if I click on this other component here that's just a regular component, it's not a void, it's an extrusion, I could see visible, yes. And it's under the graphics and everything. I've got the same option to associate a parameter with it, except now if I click on the void, I can see cuts geometry, yes. So again, it's the same as a visibility parameter. So what we're going to do is add one. I want to make a new one, and I'm going to call this detail, or void details. Void detail, there we go. I'm going to make this an instance parameter. You can make it a type, whatever you want, but I want to put this under visibility because that's just kind of what it is. It's how I'm going to remember it. I'm going to hit OK. All right. I'm actually going to go ahead and cut it in the family. So we'll take this, cut it from there, and now we can see we've got all of our voids cut in the pew there. Perfect. So I'm going to load this in. Yes, I'll go ahead and save it. Overwrite it. There we go. And I'm going to overwrite it here. And there we go. We can see we have all of our voids. And I can click on my pew. And then scrolling down here, I can see void detail. I can uncheck that. And all of a sudden, my voids are gone. That is awesome. And this applies to any type of void that you have in a family. You could do this. I could have made this a different type, where I have another type of pew here, and it's called detail, and it would show detail versus not. That is awesome. It's infinitely useful in the fact that you can show and hide voids just like that. It's very simple to do. And I sure hope that you're able to use that like I can. I know I'm going to get to use this quite a lot. This is a somewhat different feature that I didn't expect would show up in Revit 2021, but nonetheless it does, and it's the fact that Revit now actually has real-time updating realistic fly-throughs, and the fact that it's in Revit is kind of interesting. So if I go back to my floor plan and I create a camera view, we need a perspective view to start with. I can now, of course, here we see that I've got my perspective view here. I can actually change this to realistic. I'm going to remove the crop. This might take a second to load, even though I don't have many materials here, but nonetheless you can see it's realistic. But I can also fly, so this is a bit weird. I know we've been able to fly around previously, but we haven't been able to fly with realistic turned on and having all of these materials update realistically and like actually as I move around. So that's, there's not a whole lot here to look at because again I don't have many materials, but the idea here is that you can fly around your entire model and see all the materials update in real time as you fly around. That's pretty nice. Now, my only criticism to that is it seems like Revit's a little late to the party when it comes to that, because we've got really nice programs like Inkscape and Twinmotion and probably others that do this much better out of the box. It's very simple, a little more intuitive to use than this. Like, yes, it's easy to look around and see, but like the controls are kind of wonky. I will say the nice thing about this is, if I'm in here in Inkscape, I can't necessarily make edits, but what I can do here actually is I can actually make edits. It's not like I'm locked down and I'm just viewing things. I can physically make these edits and move things around, change lighting, everything that I might want to do in Revit like normal, just because I'm in this view doesn't necessarily change anything. So that's nice. That part of it is nice. We can start to introduce shadows and things like that, but you're just asking for things to take a little longer. So that's nice, but it kind of is what it is. So just be aware that you can do this now. Honestly, this is not something I will use because I use Inkscape so much. I basically always have Inkscape open when it comes to using anything, in Revit as far as designing, getting things in the right place, seeing them in 3D. I want to see them quickly in Inkscape. Very easy to update that, but just it's here, so maybe you might want to check it out, see if it works for you. This is probably easier, and it's really nice that this is now included in Revit if you don't have Inkscape. Maybe there's a reason why you don't need Inkscape now. I don't know. I would never necessarily render out of Revit, but the fact that you can better fly around your model in realistic and see what's going on in realistic views, that's kind of nice. And finally, the last big thing as far as updates in Revit 2021 are new Dynamo nodes. I'll pop them up on the screen now, but it just is what it is. We are now going to be in Dynamo 2.5. That's nice. That ships with Revit 2021. So you've got Dynamo 2.5, and really these nodes aren't anything spectacular, but nonetheless it's something nice. The fact that you can check if an element's joined or unjoined or like pinned or not pinned, that's kind of nice. So not much else beyond that, just some new nodes. Small updates within Dynamo. They've removed the downvote button, I guess. So now we just have a thumbs up, so it might help you determine what a better package might be. So that's great. And that will do it for all the new updates, all the new features in Revit 2021. I left out a gobble's worth of MEP, structure, all these different kinds of updates that I'm just not covering in this video because I'm an architect. I'm very far from an engineer, so I'm not covering those at all. I would encourage you to check those out on your own if you're interested, because I'm covering architecture here. Again, that will do it for all the new updates in Revit 2021. I sure hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, and if you learned something, please like the video. It always helps me out. Also, please consider changing the phase of that subscribe button to existing. That also does help me out a lot, especially if this is your first time here and you stuck around this long. You're awesome. Hope to see you back in future videos. Got lots of videos coming out. Looking forward to everything Revit 2021, Inkscape, Twinmotion, you name it. Hope to see you in the next one. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for watching.